What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, let's start off with this story. The headline, have the CAQ been copying off the PQ's homework? What's going on? What are they doing now?
Again, and again, the youth wing of the Coalition Avenir Quebec, because they're going to have the big dog and pony show, the big shindig next weekend, not this coming weekend, the weekend after, for their convention, same time as Quebec Solidaire. But the theme of their convention is, for the CAQ, is social media. What do we do about it? Where's it going? How do we deal with it? And the youth wing has, I'm sure, completely on its own, come up with the idea of Quebec imposing an age of digital majority on young people in this province. In other words, you have to be 16 years old before you can have access to the internet. And before that, you got to have your parents' permission. Obviously, it's going to take a lot for the parents to be involved. But all that said, I'm listening to this. I'm watching this announced today, and I'm going, man, I'm getting this real wave of déjà vu. And I said, I could have sworn I heard Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, leader of the Parti Québécois, talk about this on CJAD last week. And then in the days that followed, I could have sworn I saw François Legault on Question Period mocking Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon for the idea, saying, are you crazy? Do you know what it's going to do? Trying to keep, teenagers off of the web? Where do you think you are? And he was dismissing it. And now here's the youth wing. Because why? Because they need to change the channel on everything. So they figure, here's something that will speak to a lot of Quebecers, the idea of online access. And the youth wing is not fooling around. They are basically saying this is an addiction. Being online is an addiction that should be treated as seriously as addiction to drugs, alcohol, or cigarettes, and we've got to have a policy on it. So it's going to be discussed. How far will it go? I don't know, but I guess imitation or plagiarism is the most sincere form of flattery, Aaron, and I guess we can expect to see more of that coming down the line. But man, oh man, I mean, who do they think they're kidding?
Jim, when you said an addiction, and my first thought was, and I mentioned this when I heard about Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon about a week ago, talking about banning cell phones. Do you remember what I said at the time? Right? It's the addiction to English as much as anything else, because 90% of that is, in fact, in English.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely, but
pretty
listen,
transparent.
They'll dress it up. But what? And this is what gets me: the number one and the number two rated political parties in Quebec right now don't really have any policies to speak of, okay? They are based on one thing, keeping Quebecers scared of people who don't look or sound like them. And even though François Legault has been front and center on this issue for the past 6 years, let's give the PQ credit where credit is due. The PQ has for decades made out to, les Québécois, les Québécois de souche, that, you're surrounded and we're the only people who can keep you safe. Mm-hmm. It's a threadbare, increasingly obsolete approach to politics, but one that neither of these parties seems to have come close to abandoning yet.
Okay. From that, we move on to the university occupations. Yesterday, obviously, we talked about the fact that the injunction McGill had asked for was denied. Yeah. They will end up back in court. And today, for whatever reason, is it because she was asked, or did Pascal Derry just choose to stick her nose into this? No,
it came up in a scrum. I'll be fair. She was answering a question. But all that said, I get a little uncomfortable when, what is it, maybe 10 days after the Premier of Quebec does everything but sort of order the Montreal police to go in and pull down a protest camp on McGill. Madame Pascal Derry, Minister responsible for higher education, says she is putting out a call for calm to the pro-Palestinian demonstrators at UQAM, at Université de Sherbrooke, and as well at McGill, which I find kind of interesting because if Madame Derry has been following the story even for 10 seconds, she knows that there is so little happening. There is so little agitation, disorder involved in any of these demonstrations that not one but two Superior Court justices have said, no, I'm not going to issue an emergency injunction because there's no damn emergency. But I also, when I look at this is just another example, as far as I'm concerned, of, a good corporate employee parroting the boss's position. And, of course, as we know, François Legault We'll tell anyone who listens the McGill occupation is illegal and it should be taken down, blah, 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 blah. And I guess she's just saying, I want to make sure that everyone stays calm. And meanwhile, everyone at the occupations are kind of like dozing off because they're not front and center in attention anymore. And even when there was a counter demonstration, people yelled. Yeah, we're allowed to yell in this country. People yelled at each other, and that's as far as it went. So I do wish that Madame Derry would just, stick to her knitting, as we say in these parts, and just look after higher education, or at least that part of it that doesn't involve screwing over English language universities.
Jim, if I didn't know better, I sense this is almost perhaps inadvertently like stirring the pot. As you said, there's nothing going on, right? It's been quiet. There's been nothing going on. Why would you even bother saying something like that?
Do you think a populist government, or at least the CAQ original success was based on being populist. Do you think they're actually deliberately going out and poking people on the shoulder? What an idea, Aaron. You should be ashamed of yourself. Take that back right now.
Sorry, I take that back, but I don't. All right, next one up here. So Mayor Plante, or Valerie Plante, and I will point out, Jim, and I know this is not what we're going to talk about, but I had both Alan D'Souza and Gracia Katawa on the show earlier this afternoon. I don't know if you saw that. Did you see Alan D'Souza's Twitter post yesterday?
No, sir.
So he put up a little post with a couple of other local councillors, basically taking on the city, and in this case her, because she's the mayor of NDG Côte-des-Neiges, over their again delayed plan to extend Cavendish, because apparently there was supposed to be something happening with an environmental study, and the city's again kicked it down the road. So I'm trying to understand her. It's getting to the point. It's interesting to hear someone in the city, in the administration, tell someone who's complaining about this that it's not canceled, it's just delayed. How long do you delay something before you can actually admit it's canceled or not going to happen?
It's the equivalent of saying Lassie's not dead, she's only sleeping. I mean, the thing is, this is dead. Of course it's dead. You know why it's dead? Because it involves cars. Okay? It's as simple. It's not complicated. It is not nefarious, and the Plante administration will continue to blow smoke over this entire issue because they know they can get away with it. I've told you time and again, I always like to cite former Vision Montreal, Projet Montreal councillor Luc Ferrandez, who was being asked about a lot of the controversial decisions they were making about parking, about bicycling and all that. He says, listen, this is our agenda. We're going to do it. You don't like it, vote us out. So now, because I guess she's maybe looking at, God help us, a third term, perhaps we're being stalled on the inevitable, no, there's not going to be an extension for Cavendish Boulevard. But trust me, there's not going to be an extension for Cavendish Boulevard. Every single thing this administration has done, and you can support it or not, but please don't tell me it is not anti-car. The idea is to take cars out of the equation. The problem being, of course, especially in this city, you can't do that. And if you're going to try and turn around and create this regenerated Montreal, this bicycle-friendly, car-free Montreal, you could do it. There probably won't be that many people around, though, to take advantage of it because they'll all have bloody moved out. Because even though they keep building bike paths and express bike paths in the city of Montreal, they keep losing literally tens of thousands of residents every year.
You make a really good point, Jim, and I will point this out in the interview. She made a point of defending, this by saying the opposition simply wanted. So Alan D'Souza obviously is in Saint Laurent, right? And Cavendish, if it was extended, would go all the way from there. And she said, that's because they just want like an auto route, like a road just to go through. When the city, of course, has different plans, because of course there'd have to be a bike path and a tram or God knows what, and that seems to be the excuse.
But that's the thing, because when you say it out loud, right, it's like, the mayor of the borough of Saint Laurent wants to have improved access to his borough from the rest of the island of Montreal, which could have, a fallout on economic development and so on, just people being there. We have different ideas. And remember, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest part of the announcement of this administration about the Blue Bonnets development, was the fact they're going to be running a tramway along Jean Talon right into the middle of this utterly hypothetical, and as far as I'm concerned, as likely to happen as the Cavendish extension housing development.
And I hate to say it, I think you're right. The more and more I hear about this, and we talked to a developer, Andrew Lutfi, who basically said the same thing. It's all, smoke and mirrors. Don't wait. The city. Now remember, Valerie Plante was on this show saying, you know what? There'll be shovels in the ground in 2025. We'll see. Or maybe that's the end of it.
There might be a snowfall there.
That's
but,
right.
You know, they won't be building stuff.
All right, James, Manny, Jim. Thank you.
Adam.